Okay, so the next section. Okay, we just done animation and poses, and so I'll probably do the next 3 sections all in one because they're very simple. Okay, so underneath animation and poses, underneath in the window, not underneath here, this because we've already done those, is collision bone select and normal bone select. And let's see. So collision bones are the bones that you rig to for fitted mesh. And normal bone select selects what I call the M bones. Let me open up the outliner and show you. Okay, so here is the avatar skeleton. Okay, the M bones are what I call the normal bones. M bones, normal bones are the same thing. The M bones are all the bones that start with the letter, lowercase letter M. Okay, these are what I call normal bones, but what a lot of people refer to as M bones. So M bones, normal bones are interchangeable, same thing. Okay, and these are also the bones that what you rig to for what is called classic rigging. And classic rigging is rigging mesh that is not fitted mesh. All rigged mesh before fitted mesh was rigged solely to the M bones. And so it didn't have a name such as fitted mesh, because it was just mesh, rigged mesh. So, but now most people refer to rigging to the M bones as classic rigging, and that's rigging to just the M bones. And so the M bones do not change their scale, so the mesh clothing does not change size. So the size is fixed. So for the 5 standard sizes that we talked about earlier in the appearance editor, the 5 standard sizes, when you rig to the 5 standard sizes, you're rigging for classic rigging, which is rigging to the M bones, or to the normal bones. The other bones that you see are don't start with the lowercase m, and their letters are all in uppercase. And so you have and those are what are called the collision bones. And those are the bones that you rig to for fitted mesh. And those are the bones that change scale when you change your appearance editor sliders in Second Life, so that the clothing is supposed to change size to fit the avatar. Although it's a very flawed system and it's very difficult. It is anybody just starting out learning to rig. Do not try to rig for fitted mesh right away. You want to learn classic rigging first, because classic rigging is so much easier to rig to, because classic rigging, you only have to worry about how does your mesh clothes move when the avatar's joints are rotated. When the avatar moves, how does the mesh clothing move? Does it move well? Does it bend well? Does it bend in the right places? And so you're only having to worry about one thing when you're adjusting the weights of your mesh clothing, is just that one factor, parameter, however you want to call it. With fitted mesh, the bones not only rotate, but they also change scale. So now you have to be concerned about 2 things. One, how does the clothes look when the avatar moves and when the joints bend? But you also have to worry about how does the clothes look when that joint changes scale. And you only have one control. See, that's the thing that really stinks, is that you only have one input to control to try to compensate for both. So with the weights, changing the numeric value of the weights of the vertices, you only have one value to change, one input to try to compensate for both rotation and how does it scale. And many times you can't get either or perfect. So you have to come to a compromise. And so that's one of the major flaws with fitted mesh. And then you throw on top of that if you're making fitted mesh for the default avatar, like you see here, if you try to make fitted mesh for that, you run into a second problem in that the default avatar does not change shape. This mesh here, which is the same exact mesh as the default mesh in Second Life, the Linden Lab default mesh, and it's weighted exactly the way it is weighted in Second Life for the Linden Lab default viewer. So this avatar, as we change the, say let's change the torso, or we'll change the body fat. Okay, see how the body changes shape? That is not changing shape by changing the scale of the bones. Okay, that is changing shape by what's called a morph. In Maya, it's often referred to as a blend shape, but in the rest of the 3D community, it's called a morph. And so morphs do not change shape that way. What they did is they started off with this mesh, which is the mesh default. There's no blend shapes or morphs applied to it. And they duplicate it, and they go in there, and they take the duplicate, and they sculpt it. They sculpt it. They don't change the scales. They actually come in here and sculpt it like you're sculpting, you know. And then they connect this target shape to the original, and it creates what is called a blend shape or a morph. So that as you go from 0 to 1, you know, the morphs go from 0 to 1. So 50% would be 0.5. And so they didn't sculpt every little step in between. They just sculpted this. So they start off with that, they duplicated it, and then they sculpted it, doing what by whatever means to move the vertices. If it was, you know, if they used, let's see, where is it? Sculpt geometry tool. You know, so if they use the sculpt geometry tool to push and pull to move different vertices out, or if they use some other tool, you know, actually selected the vertices and moved them, that's how they came up with this second shape. So the default avatar in Second Life changes shape differently. It is basically impossible to achieve a mesh, even if you start off with the default shape and weight it in such a way so as the scales change that you can end up with this shape. It is basically impossible. And even if you can get close to this shape, getting it to fit all the shapes in between are next to impossible. So one coming up with a, you know, this is, it's just impossible. Unless you do, well, that's a whole nother video. Watch my video for the 3 different body shapes, voluptuous, hourglass, and waif. If you want to actually make a fitted mesh avatar that is rigged to fit those different shapes. And but I know, as far as I know, nobody's done it. Everybody, when you're doing fitted mesh, you rig it to fit, you create your mesh clothing to fit the default avatar shape, just as you see it here, and then you rig it to the collision bones, and then after you rig it to the collision bones, you increase the body fat, and then you try to adjust the weights of the mesh clothing so that it fits the body fat. In fact, I actually say don't worry about the body fat, because very few people in Second Life had their body fat on anything other than 0. Some people put it a little bit, but you know, there's very few if you look around. So if you're making fashion for women, I would pretty much say don't worry about adjusting the body fat. It's more so that the breast size is, so you'd start off with the breasts that way, then you make it big and you weight paint it so that it at least fits the breasts at the full size. Although it won't fit after below about 30. It's not a perfect system, like I said. You'll start seeing poke through on 30. You can get it to fit pretty well between 50 or between 30 and 100. You can get it to weight it pretty well, but anything below that, 30, it really starts to get bad. But very few women in Second Life have small breasts. Most women have fairly voluptuous breasts, fairly large-breasted. Women in Second Life are the vast majority. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so back to what these do. We're already at the 10-minute mark. Okay, so collision bone select. It does exactly what it says it does. You click on it, and you see it selects the collision bones. You can see that the lighter blue indicates that that's selected, and the sort of darker blue, those are not selected. Those are just in between what's being selected. Let's see, because they're the parent object of what's being selected. As you see here, like the right foot is parented to the MNI directly, so it's not. So these two aren't being, because they don't have any collision bones parented to them. So they're still black. So anyway, and then if you click the normal bone select, you'll notice it selects just the M bones. Okay, so that's what those two do. So if you click on both of them, no matter what order it is, it selects all the bones in the skeleton. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to stop this video here, and I will go. Yeah, and I'll go on. So because I'm trying to keep these relatively short. See you in the next video.